Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris Martinez here, host of Operation Agency Freedom. You know what? It's not very often that I get to interview folks anymore, but when I do, I have some rock star guests. So I've got Daryl Urbanski. He's an amazing podcaster himself. He's also an expat. I believe he's living in the Philippines or Thailand. I can't remember. We'll talk about it in the episode for sure. Awesome guy. And he is also going to talk about a topic that I find very, very interesting, which is essentially he spent a ton of money conducting the equivalent of a college study on what leads to success and habit building and all those things that we know that are really, really important, but are usually not really, really fun to put into practice. And he's also developed an app around it as well. So he's doing some really cool things to help improve performance among all folks. So let's check out that interview with Daryl. If you have any questions, make sure that you go to the show notes because he references a lot of different tools that you can get access to. Then you can, follow up. And if there's something that you want to implement for yourself or for your team, you can reach out to Daryl directly and hopefully you guys can work together in some way, shape, or form. So with that being said, let's head over and hear what Daryl has to say. Have an awesome day. What's up, Daryl? Good to see you, man.
What's up, Chris? Good to see you too.
Right? It looks like it's a bright, sunny day there. You're in the Philippines, right?
I am in the Philippines. So, it is. It's 7 a.m. here. I'm in my car because, everything's okay. Well, my wife's grandmother passed away last night, but it was expected. It's been like months and they just decided to finally pull the plug. But the tradition here is that until the wake, she's in a casket with flowers and all that. She has to be supervised 24 hours a day. So nobody sleeps. The whole family's over. Everyone's eating inside. We've been here since like 8 p.m. last Monday night. And I just popped out just to get away from the music and the people and that. And until Saturday, it's just going to be like a nonstop kind of like family reunion kind of thing that you can see. So I think that's great. I think it's like a great way to bring people together. Yeah. Anyways, so
I wasn't expecting you to say that, but my condolences to the family. Like my dad died 15 years ago. My wife's dad passed away 3 years ago. It is really interesting how different cultures handle death and kind of like the transition, period. And, I've like studied it on an amateur level for the past few years and actually it was helpful for my own grief. But it's fascinating the way the different cultures approach it.
There's always a ritual and it's very impactful. And if it's someone close to you, never forget it. Like, for me, I wasn't close to her. She was over 90. She had a good life. So no one's distraught, but it's a really good moment to realize, hey, whatever we build, we can't take with us. I have this card I used to keep. I wish I had it on me now, but I had the top regrets of the dying. And it was this nurse that used to work in palliative care. And she summarized kind of her 15, 20 years working in palliative care. For people that don't know, is like where you go in the hospital when it's just a matter of time. And she was writing all that. And there's like 5. And it's like, I wish I'd lived a life true to myself. I wish I'd spent more time with my friends and family. I wish I didn't work so hard. Oh, I wish I knew what the
started that business. I wish I would have,
Yeah. It's like, I wish I'd let myself be happier.
Spend more time with the kids. Like kind of read something like that too. Yeah. It's never, I wish I would have bought that car. I wish I would have bought that BMW, it's interesting because it's always around things that we kind of take for granted as we're going through life.
Money makes you happy to a point, Oprah did say, whoever told you having your own private jet won't make you happy was lying to you. But the studies show that money makes you happier up to a point. And I helped a few people make a few million and I made a bunch of commission off that. And I had more money than I needed. And at some point it just kind of pivoted where I just stopped being motivated by money and I really became more motivated by impact and legacy. At some point, okay, great. But I moved away from everybody. I'm a single guy. I've got all this money. I could be anywhere, but I could be everywhere. Everyone else has got things to do. What am I doing? I did that. I made a bunch of money. I went to the Philippines. I lived on the beach for 2 years. I did all the wild, crazy stuff. And then it just kind of came, what's my life about? Why am I here? What's my legacy? What's my purpose? What's my impact? And that kind of leads to what we came to talk about here today, because especially at the beginning of the pandemic, I was still working with clients and stuff like that. But, millions of people were being laid off or put on pause. And I knew there was going to be a lot of people changing careers as a result. And I also knew that the sharks were smelling blood in the water in sense of how do you know who to trust? Unless you're seeing someone's tax returns, it's all like smoke and mirrors. And everyone was arguing about what does the science say about this and and that. And I went, well, what does the science say is important for success in business, as a small and medium-sized business? So I spent $50,000, hired 7 researchers / research teams. A couple were pairs or 3-4 people. And we went through all the literature. We got access to all the journals we could. We basically did a meta-analysis or a systemic review of reviews. So a meta-analysis, for people that don't know, is when someone publishes a paper summarizing hundreds and thousands of studies. And we went through hundreds of those and individual studies too. And we tried to figure out, what does the science say is important? And when we started looking at all the factors that they had discovered. And some were very specific, like supply chain management and entrepreneurial skill, which is kind of vague. And so we mapped them all out and we tried to figure out, what are the umbrella categories all these things fit into? And we found 8 ones that are within our control. There's actually a 9th, and the 9th factor that influences success in business is government / economic condition. But it's not realistic. You and I are going to change the economy or the government ourselves. So the 8 things, and even no matter what the conditions were, we found that the 8 factors were still kind of the only things within your control. And this is irrespective of language, culture, if you're socialist or, open free market, if you're trying to grow a business, these are the 8 things that you need to focus on, the 8 types of business habits.
I love that. Before we get into that, though, can you just give us, you kind of alluded to it a little bit. Can you give us kind of like your brief history in digital marketing? Because you've been doing this for a while. And that's why I want to have you on, is because you're like an OG. You worked with all the big guys too, the big names. Yeah, so just give us kind of like your, I don't know, your short version of your very long story.
Yeah, I know. I can talk a lot. That's why I paused, because I was like, hold on. I started when I was 17. I'd already worked across Canada for 9 months, and I was going to hitchhike to the west coast of Canada, and I'd found a place to live, and I needed a job. And I was 17, turning 18. I was going to go to high school out there. I was going to live on my own. And so I went to the city, Penticton, BC, their local chamber of commerce. I scraped all the business's email address, and I came up with a 3-step email campaign. I had no idea. I was just a kid. I came up with a 3-step email campaign being like, yo, I need a job. I got bills to pay. I'm thumbing it out there. And the first one was like an intro and my resume. And the second one was me in a PowerPoint. And the last one was like, last notice, I'm hitting the road. And it worked. I got a bunch of interviews lined up for when I got out there. So that was when I was 17. And, fast forward, using online, my claim to fame is I've helped build 7-figure automated income streams from scratch, which sounds snazzy, but it's like paid ads to sales pages, webinars, video sales letters with automation and even database optimization. So things like, if we were at a marketing conference, I would say I'm a direct response database automation marketer. So like one client, we turned 50,000 into 600,000 total sales and back-end sales, because we analyzed 20,000 of her orders, figured out the hurdle rates between first, second, third, fourth to sixth purchase. And in the CRM, we set up triggers. So if somebody came, they got our opt-in and they bought the first thing, we knew the typical path and how many days typically in between purchases. And we set up triggers in the CRM to automatically message those people. So if you bought product 1, not 2, and it had been 42 days, we automatically sent you our most proven email campaign. Plus we sent you to our remarketing pixels, right? And had our ads show to you and that sort of thing. So we set up our funnels like that. So I've been in the game a long time, and I help businesses, websites, get clients, keep them longer. But the stuff applies online and offline. So
sweet. So then let's fast forward. Then what motivated you to want to do this study? Because, I like to consider myself an academic, and anytime, I hear about people actually doing a legitimate study, I get really excited. Yeah. So what was the motivation to starting this study about, kind of the 8 common habits of success?
I think a lot of people might feel this way. You do the seminars, you join the mastermind groups, you read the books, and it's just the he said, she said, and that would never fly in medicine. There's actually a hierarchy of evidence. And in the hierarchy of evidence, at the bottom is expert opinion. And then you've got like personal case studies, like a personal account. And then you've got cohort studies, and then you've got double blind studies, and then you've got meta-analyses and systemic reviews. The whole B2B industry is all based off of, I have a podcast, I wrote a book, therefore gamble your future on what I say. And there's all these weekend seminars. And so the trigger, the pivotal moment, is I had done a copywriter from Mind Valley, and I put on a couple of workshops in Vietnam. I lived in Vietnam a couple of years. It was just a fun side thing. Maybe it would turn into something. And this guy came to one of the events, and the offer was, if you're not happy by noon, we'll give you a full refund, send you home. And this guy came, and we did the noon. Hey, anybody want? And nobody wanted to go. So we kept going. And this guy stayed to the end. He ate all my free food for the lunch. And then at the end, he started picking my girlfriend's brain because she had just graduated from university in the Philippines, and I'd helped her build an agency up to 10 grand a month. She had like 22, 23 clients, 20 staff, all that stuff. And he was trying to be a writer, but he was just constantly English teaching because he couldn't make it. So we do the event, and after the event, he's picking her brain for a half hour. And at the very end of it, he's like, so bro, you know that refund thing that you had? Well, I kind of need my money back. I spent my rent money to come here. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I announced it at noon. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I'm just trying to make it. And I was like, okay, man. And no, whatever. Okay, here's your refund. 3 months later, I see this kid marketing in Facebook groups in Vietnam, his Entrepreneurs Manifest Success Workshop. And I was livid because, I've been doing this for 17 years. I've got my licks. I still get licks. You know what I mean? Like, and this kid is like, so anyways, that was like, I'm like, there are so many sharks out there. And I also saw, I don't want to name names, but there was a big name in the industry that at the time was going very public about another big name guru ripping off his code, his billionaire code stuff. And I was just like, there needs to be some, like, there's no regulation. So there needs to be something, and there has to be a way. And so I want to know for myself and for other people. And like I said before, like a legacy thing. When your bills are paid and when you're not worried about your, roof and ramen, like why do you get up in the morning? Start trying to tap into a deeper reason. And like you, I'm a fact collector. I love data. I read studies on health and longevity and that, like, for fun. Like,
yeah, me too.
So yeah.
I just like doing the research. I know that you did the study, but I wanted to ask you some questions about, like, how did you actually put this thing together? Like, who did you hire? Who was a part of the team? What went into it? How did you prove or disprove any hypotheses that you had at the start of the study?
Right. So originally it was called the fake guru solution. And what I wanted to do was figure out the factors, figure out how to measure the factors and benchmark industries. So for example, if you're a Facebook advertising agency, we would want to say, hey, okay, well, as a Facebook advertising agency, you should be able to improve factor X by X percent. And we would publish the reports and the studies and determine best practices and that. And Adam Urbanski was on board. Alex Sharfin was, I had a bunch of people that were kind of ready to do it. And so we were trying to figure out how do we measure this. This was right around Trump's election. And I knew that we had a deadline because then Christmas and all that stuff. And so in the beginning, I hired a master's in program evaluation out of Uganda. I hired a couple of research students out of Nigeria. I had PhD mathematician, Queen's University, on board as well. We also had a buddy of mine at the University of Madrid on board. So I hired a bunch of different researchers and I built a team of about 12 people in different groups. And so we had people that would find things and pass them on. We would all review it. And then we would all kind of figure how does it fit in or where does it go? And we would all kind of debate it, like what survives, what doesn't survive, and does this make sense? And we just kept iterating that. And once we finalized it, we've got about 30 studies that some are foundational and some are supportive. So some are foundational because they were also trying to find the success factors. And we got like 20, 25 of those. But then we have some, like there's a Harvard study that interviewed something like 25,000 CEOs to figure out what are the successful traits of a CEO. So that's a supporting study of one of the factors, if that makes sense. And so that's how we put it together. And then we actually went through all the literature to go, okay, we've got these 8 factors. Like the first one is self-efficacy. That's your entrepreneurial experience. That's your proactivity. That's your communication skills, your leadership skills, your negotiation skills, your teamwork skills. If you aren't effective, if you can't manage your time, that's going to hurt you. You might still be successful in spite of yourself, but that's a factor within your control, right? So the first of the 8 is self-efficacy. Then we started going, well, how do we measure these things? And so then we started going through the literature to find the most authoritative measurement tools that we could find. Because when there's a measurement tool like a survey, you can't just make a survey because there could be cultural bias in the questions. The questions could be leading questions. So people actually have to create these and then test them for these things to validate them. So we went through and we found not only a survey for each factor, but try the authoritative ones. So at the end of it, we had our 8 factors and we had a survey to measure each of them. And the idea was we were going to put people through and help validate, like a third-party validation service of other gurus. But what we came up upon was that people were shy to do it. People didn't want to find out that maybe they were or weren't good. There were some people that had no fear of it at all, but there wasn't that. And so we changed it and we started trying to use it a different way. So one of the things that I've done, like my podcast, is we started grading all the people that we've had on the show by these factors, at least for what we could see, like Do they have reviews? Have they done a cohort study? Do they have certifications and endorsements from other people? So we've got like a little pyramid of evidence, and what factor are they an authority in?
So were you able to actually do the surveys the way that you had intended, or did you have to scrap that part of it and just kind of do research based on other things that you found?
Yeah. So no, we did the research and we've got the surveys for each factor. But then we created this program. That's the Habit Hero program, the 90 days to the 8 types of better business habits that we've got. It's actually a 1-year program, but we try to get people results in 14 days. And then in 90 days, you complete a cycle and you can loop in again. And so that's kind of how it turned in. So now the way we're using it is we're doing corporate training. We're actually in talks with a couple of universities about using the curriculum, and we're helping people kind of, it's business coaching and mentorship via daily habit tracking and weekly challenges. So that's how we've done it. So we're using it that way. And then with my podcast, we're also just helping guests for free to figure out how credible they are, how to improve it. And then what we want to do is create a league of extraordinary experts out of that, because we just want to raise the benchmark for what people have to have. And that's like under that, I'm under fire as well. That's part of why we're going for corporate training now, because I want groups, because I want to get cohort studies now. We've got some people in it. We got reviews. Now it's like, let's get some cohort studies done, because I myself have to prove it, and I don't know if that answers your question. I don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, it does to an extent. I majored in sociology in university, and or we say college in the States. And so, I had to take statistics and all kinds of courses on running studies and things like that. So I was just, my actual question was like the sample size for the surveys specifically. It seems like to get a relatively low percentage of error or margin of error, you would need to survey like a lot of people. So I didn't, that seemed really, really difficult.
Yeah. We didn't create the survey. So we've pulled the surveys from the literature, and it's so after the show, if you want to talk, I can show you a survey and we have the references. Like, this is based off of this person's survey.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense.
They did the legwork for us.
Perfect. That's what okay. So that definitely clarifies things. So let's talk about the 8, what are the 8 things? And I know we don't have enough time to dive too deeply into all of them, but I love these types of studies. I'm sure you've heard of the marshmallow test that they give to kids to see how well they, I love that study. I can't remember, maybe it was Simon Sinek or somebody who talks about your ability to delay gratification, is one of the key factors in determining your future success. I love those types of studies because for me, I've tried to kind of reverse engineer I love to try and figure out why am I the way that I am, and why are certain people that I admire, what has helped them to be successful aside from being born into money, which if you're born into money, I'm sorry, it's just not somebody that I really admire. It's not somebody that I can relate to. I like to see like, how did these underdogs overcome obstacles and all these odds to make it and become successful? So like, tell us, like, what are the 8 factors or the habits that you have discovered?
These are the 8 categories. And so first one we already mentioned was self-efficacy, right? You got to get things done. Otherwise you don't. The next one is strategic planning. You don't want to be selling fax machines in the era of email and file transfers, right? So that's strategic planning. Or you have to have some sort of supply chain advantage or something. Like, what is the strategy that you've got to deliver and create whatever it is? You need market intelligence. This is really important because newspapers used to have a monopoly in their cities for the most part. They had revenue, right? They had buyers, they had customers, they had lists. But when blogs came out, they got decimated because they lost touch with the market and what it really wanted. And that's why these are habits, because it's not just something, right, to do once. These are things that you have to review and do on a regular. So market intelligence, self-efficacy, strategic planning, market intelligence, marketing strategy. That's the next one. Sales strategy and skills. Now we combine those because depending on the sales strategy, it determines the skills required. So those aren't separate because they're part and parcel. McDonald's, their strategy is to sell through their marketing. So the salesperson at the counter just takes orders.
It's an order taker. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Do you want to upsize that? Like, that's their the skills. So then the next after that would be money management. Enron's a great example of a big company, had a lot of money, right? They didn't manage it well. Right? Blockbuster Netflix is another good example too of the market intelligence and strategy one. So we've got self-efficacy, strategic planning, market intelligence, marketing strategy, sales strategy and skill, money management, Then you have business operations. This is what a lot of companies, they used to call it the Oprah effect. And this was being featured or mentioned on Oprah killed businesses because they would be slammed with orders and the negative reviews would build up. Yeah. And so they didn't have the operations. This is cybersecurity. It's your meeting rhythms. It's your HR process. It's your legal compliance, your admin stuff, that business operations stuff, that hold the glue that holds it all together. And then the last success factor is business intelligence. These are the feedback loops. These are your financials, your dashboards. How are we performing? How are we being seen? This is the mirror that you're holding up to see, like, we're doing all this activity. What is the reality of our efforts? And those are the eight categories, the 8 types of habits that you have to have on a consistent basis.
Got it. I love it. So, like from the agency perspective, well, first of all, most agency owners never even considered these things, these 8 categories. Right. But what do you see as being the biggest challenges in relation to the 8 that agency owners face?
Well, any business that's always trimming the fat, right? There's always an 80-20. So I really think self-efficacy is a big one. So, I mean, here's a simple example. And I've had a couple, it's funny, every time I bring this up, people are like, okay, those are the 8, but what's the one that rules them all? And I'm kind of like, it's like Think and Grow Rich. There's 13 principles. You know what I mean? Like, you can get momentum with any of them, but if you get all 13 going, that's better than, and I think when we finish the book, I think it'll be a classic like that. But yeah, so, I mean, I think self-efficacy is the pillar everything stands on. Because if, for a simple example, I'm big into fitness because I know, and I've learned through working with all these different companies, just even observing staff and hiring people, the discipline, all that stuff that you learn. Like if your team is not effective, every company has fat. There's the 80-20. The 20% of your staff that get 80% of your results, the 20% of your client base that pay you 80% of your profits. Right. So I really think the self-efficacy, and that's what free markets are supposed to do, right? They're supposed to focus on excellence and efficiency. And so I think that that's a really important one because also lets you give the most value to your clients and all that stuff. But if you've got a bunch of staff that's kind of bloated, a lot of people, they build org charts and they hire to an org chart, not an accountability chart, right? So that's another example where if you've got all the tasks that need to get done listed and you can organize those into categories and then hire to those, and you have SOPs outlined for those, including how much time it should take to complete each task, something to get way more efficient. That's an example of a business operation and maybe even a strategic planning overlap. But it's why it's tough to say that there's any one. I mean, it's a chicken or the egg, right? If you don't have tie with the market, are you going to get sales? But if you don't have sales, right?
Yeah,
you do have the market.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I also agree that, most oftentimes people look for that magic pill solution when the reality is it's a bunch of different factors that all kind of have to meet at the right time. Let me ask a different question because I just read another book about leadership, and basically they were talking about one of the challenges with managing people today is that for the first time in history, we have 5 different generations that are essentially all sharing the same office. 5 different generations that have been raised with different values, that have been essentially trained in different skill sets. And we're trying to piece it all together. And it's really hard to establish a cadence that works well for everybody. How do you think that by understanding the 8 categories that you've identified can help make this really, really challenging task of fitting this team together? How do you think it can make it easier?
I really appreciate that question. It's like the essential oil of what needs to get done, in sense of you could have the whole plant and all this stuff and all these cultural values and that, or you can just distill it, squeeze it down to these are the activity. These are the things that have to be these are the engine that have to be running. So even though there's differences in generations between people, at the end of the day, if you can manage it, you can grow it and improve it. So that's kind of a teamwork and a communications issue. And that fits under self-efficacy, or it might be part of your HR program under business operations, where how do you foster that team communication and development? But the difference in values in that, there's a saying, you can't keep wealth past 3 generations. The first one struggles and earns it. The second one witnessed their parents grind, respects it, preserves it. And the third one knows nothing but luxury and squanders it. So I feel like some of this conflict, it might be technological, but there also could be a loss of the values and principles, and not necessarily across the board, I'm speaking generally, but the values that helped build the, look at America right now, right? There's instant gratification has destroyed people, social media, attention spans. So when you speak to this, some of it isn't necessarily generational or cultural. It's if you have a garden, you can't just be there are no weeds, there are no weeds, there are no weeds, right? They're going to take you off the loony bin. You have to look and go, hey, what are the things that we need to be doing, taking care of? And let's pull everything else out.
Right.
I don't know if that answers it. I don't know if that.
It does. It does. It definitely, we could talk about this much longer. I could continue to ask you a lot more questions. But in general, I think, you've identified a really solid framework that can work across, or at least provide data as to how you can implement new systems that can help everybody work together, especially like in an agency environment. So,
and I mean, if you identify skill sets, sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say, if you've got an old timer and they're great with people, like digital media is just that at skill. Like, you know this, right? Like marketing is salesmanship multiplied. So it's almost like that could be an advantage. If you have an old timer that's used to those personal touch meetings and that face-to-face connection, that is incredibly powerful. If you can take a younger one that knows TikTok and run it through there, like I think it helps to have the segments, like who's doing the market intelligence, who's doing the marketing strategy, who's doing the sales strategy and skills, and who's where, right? Like, I don't know if the old timer should be the one defining how we work on TikTok. I mean, they might be amazing at it, but generally speaking, if they didn't grow up with computers, that might not be their best strength. But on the people side, right? Whether it's in business operations, whether it's in market intelligence, they could just be so personal, so real, willing to go and sit down in people's living rooms. I'm using an example of someone that's more used to a personal one-on-one, sit in the same room, take time, quality time with people, right? I don't know if that makes sense or not, but.
Well, I agree with you on that specifically. We created a process called Bridge, Connect, and Deliver, where essentially what we're trying to do is inject more humanity into the way that we conduct business. Because I think in the agency space, we have become so good at automation and technology. So we've tried to manage these relationships and really cultivate trust through the computer. And in my opinion, human beings aren't ready for that, and that's why we're lacking a lot of that interpersonal connection that is essentially birthing movements like the MAGA movement and the QAnon, where these people are stuck behind a computer. And in theory, we've been more connected than ever, but people feel more alone than ever as well. And as a business owner, you need to understand that people are dying for connection. They're dying to have somebody who will just talk to them like a human being, one-on-one, and just say, I hear what you're saying. I understand. And I'm not going to let you fall. I got your back. That's to me what is lacking in our industry. And when I say our industry, I mean anybody who's related to technology. Is that we've been trying to automate these relationships and human beings that I don't believe that the human brain is wired for that yet. And so we've got to get back to these fundamentals of like, let's just sit down and have some coffee and chat or have a drink, like one of those.
100%, and it's profitable. We've had online funnels that have been generating profit. We've done hundreds of thousands with them. We put a phone team on there, people on the phone, and it's almost always given a 20% bump.
100%.
Phone team follow up with your online marketing, right? Customer success. Like one of the things that I want to work on now is when people onboard in my program that we have someone call them within the first 24 hours. We're not there yet, but we want to have people like, hey, let's talk to you. Let's sketch. Hey, what's going that hand holding? Now you've got like a raving fan, that loyalty, right? Like even if you don't have an ethical bone in your body, the only way to do business is to take care of people and be as ethical as possible if you're in it for the long haul. That's the other thing that came out of the study, right? Get rich quick schemes, all this kind of shuffling paper, like avoiding, you got to click 12 times to cancel. You just got to be real.
Well, that also cannibalized our own industry because nobody trusts us anymore. Digital marketing people are considered scumbags by most of the business community.
Right.
We're almost out of time. Let's talk specifically if people want to learn about the 8 categories, what can they do? How can they get access to this information this study that you've put together? I don't know if you've launched your program yet or if it's kind of like in beta mode, but you tell me, like, if I'm an agency owner and I'm listening to this and I'm like, man, these 8 categories really resonated with me. What are the next steps that people could take to just, get their hands on your study?
Yeah. So email me at Daryl, Daryl at bestbusinesscoach.ca, CA for Canada or California. You can go to bestbusinesscoach.ca as well, but we put almost about 170 people through the program. And like I said, I'm talking to universities now, talking to a couple of companies that want to put their sales and marketing teams through it. So it depends on who they are and what, but just send an email or you can check out the website, but I think send an email with your questions. what you're looking for, and then, we can reply and go from there.
I love it, man. All right. 2 final questions. Who is the perfect person to reach out to you for this type of information?
Someone who already knows that success comes from our daily and weekly routines, and they want help for themselves and possibly their teams to track and optimize these. Again, the program is about business coaching and mentorship via daily habit tracking and weekly challenges to do mini projects, to refine habits, to change your focus on another area so we don't neglect anything. So someone that would be ideal is that. I mean, you're working in marketing and sales because it's that driven. If you're simply, doing accounting, this program may not be as much of a benefit for you because we focus on the market intelligence, the marketing strategy, sales strategy and skills. But you also need to know the back end. Like if you're a sales rep, what's going to happen to this person after they buy? You need to know what that happens on the back end. So it's all kind of relevant if you're working in marketing and sales or a founder. I think that answers it.
I love it. And then final one, just any parting words of advice for our agencies out there. It's such a difficult business to run. Anything that you've learned along the way or just some knowledge that you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, that's a great...
Putting you on the spot. By the way, I didn't prep him with these questions.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I really think that's it. You have to have long-term vision, and you have to understand, you have to think long-term, but act short-term in the sense that what you do today is going to feed you or hurt you tomorrow. You think long-term, act short-term. What are you getting done today, this week? But what's the 5-year plan? It's almost like, hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And just try to focus on doing less, better, and to completion. Don't do everything for everybody. I think that's a really important one. That's something I need to listen to more. But it's just knowing that you're an agency owner and there's a lot of things, could be staff, could be clients, could be all. It's like just try to do less, better to completion, thinking long-term, but acting like today and this week. I think that's... Yeah, no,
I mean, that's perfect. I've spent the past few months talking about how we're in the next evolution of the agency industry and how the first, 15, 20 years, essentially, it was Wild West where you knew a certain type of technology, you knew how to do some sort of technical thing and you could build a business just doing that. And you didn't have to know shit about running an actual business. And now it's changed. Now the technology thing that you might know, there's probably a lot of other people who are fairly similar in knowledge that you have. You have to know how to run the business. You have to dive into that non-sexy stuff and really start to plan long-term. I'll bet that 99% of agency owners out there don't have a written down 3-year plan of how they're going to grow their agency.
Yep.
But I can tell you that the 1% who do, they're making a lot of headway on getting that shit done.
Yeah, because they got vision and all the decisions are guided.
Right, exactly. It's amazing what happens. So this is one of the things that we help our agency clients out with. Is we help them build out this pro forma, which is like a financial planning document. It's amazing what happens when you just write down your sales goals.
Yep.
Just and be realistic about it. Don't just throw out numbers. Say, I'm going to we're going to generate this many leads. We're going to have this closing ratio. This is how much we're going to sell. And this is how much we're going to charge on average.
Yeah.
And then where dude comes in is we say, okay, so you sold that much. This is how much we're going to use of that revenue to actually get the projects completed.
Yeah.
Now we've got a real business and we're going to map this out, not just for this year, but we're going to map it out for 3 years. Yeah, that's where the magic happens, man.
I love that. So. I just had a guy, because one of the things we do track for some people is daily lead. If you want to get paid daily, you need leads and sales daily. Yep. And he's like, I hate putting 0 in that box. He's like, I get leads and sales because I hate putting 0 in that box. He's like, I hate it. And it's true. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And if you can't manage it, you can't grow it. It's just awareness and attention. Yeah. So many people 100%. Are capable, but they just get distracted, or they Jim Rohn used to say they major in minor things. Right?
That's really good. I don't think I've ever heard that one before. Yeah. That's great. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. You've been listening to Daryl Urbanski. He is, what's the email again? Just give it to us.
Daryl, DARYL @bestbusinesscoach.ca.
Definitely reach out to him. He is onto some big things. And especially, if you're an agency owner and you recognize that you need to develop better habits to survive and thrive in the next evolution of running an agency, definitely reach out to him. I know that he can help you out. So thanks so much, Daryl. We'll see you again soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much to me if you could share it with your friends, family, and basically anyone who will find the same value in this episode that you did. And to get the latest from me, then let's definitely connect on social media. You can go to Facebook, facebook.com/Dude Agency, or Instagram @dudeagency.io, or you can check us out on YouTube on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, you can always visit our website at dudeagency.io, where you can see all of our other episodes of Operation Agency Freedom. You can also register for any live trainings that we have going on how to run a highly profitable agency. And of course, you can see how we help digital agencies with the people, the processes, and the education so that they can take on more projects and scale profitably. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.